I'm celebrating some big wins today. I finished improv class level 1 on March 9th, and I recorded my medical narration demo on Wednesday, March 11th. I'll tell you about these 2 milestones and more on today's show. You're listening to the Pharmacist Voice Podcast, a journey-style podcast about my career change from pharmacist to voice actor. I'm your host, Kim Newlove. I alternate solo shows and interview shows. The solo shows are about my career change, and the interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate, educate, or entertain. This podcast is intended for anyone who enjoys a good story and might be looking for some inspiration on their entrepreneurial journey. I'm a pharmacist and voice actor who specializes in medical narration and e-learning. If you want to hire me, please contact me through my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. That's thepharmacist with an S, voice.com. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 10. I made it into the double digits. This episode is about celebrating some big wins. Not only have I made it into the double digits with this podcast, but I also finished a class and recorded a demo. Before I start talking about those milestones, though, I want to take just a minute to say thank you. Since I started this podcast in December of 2019, I have had hundreds of downloads, and according to my podcast stats, my listeners are in 22 states and 10 countries. That's pretty cool. Thank you for listening. I also want to thank Dave Jackson for teaching me how to podcast, and my classmates at the School of Podcasting for their support and advice. Now, let's talk about improv. When I first realized that I needed to take an improv class, I was on a lunch break from a voiceover conference in New York City. It was a beautiful September afternoon in 2019. I was chowing down on some barbecue and hanging out on a bench in Riverside Park with dozens of other voice actors. Keith Norton and Jen Olea, in particular, recommended that I take an improv class. They told me that it would help me become a better voice actor. Even though they were very encouraging and explained themselves very well, my brain didn't make the connection between improv and voiceover at first. I didn't have my aha moment until 6 months later, this month, March 2020. Everything I knew about improv I learned 20 years ago from a TV show called Whose Line Is It Anyway? If you haven't seen that show, check it out. It's funny. It featured Drew Carey, a fellow Ohioan and comedian, and a group of talented comedians like Wayne Brady, Colin Mockery, and Ryan Stiles. During the voiceover conference called VOcation NYC, other presenters and students mentioned improv. It's like I had awakened to a word I didn't know I needed in my vocabulary. I wasn't saying it. I wasn't even asking about it. People were just organically talking about improv. When I got back to Ohio and continued my audiobook narration lessons at the end of September, my teacher, Sean Pratt, also suggested I get improv training. When your teacher assigns you homework, you do it, right? So that same day, I searched for an improv class and found one at Glass City Improv in Toledo, Ohio. That's about 20 to 30 minutes from where I live. I was too late to start the current session, and the next session started in January. That gave me a chance to check out their monthly show called, well, you guessed it, The Monthly. My friend Jody and I went to the show at the end of October, and we laughed our butts off. It was great. Jody even said that she could see me doing that stuff. That gave me a boost of confidence. I wanted to become a better voice actor, so I signed up for Level 1 Improv Class. That's the entry-level class, the beginner class. My improv class started on Monday, January 25th, and was taught mostly by Aaron Canary and substituted a couple of times by Jeremy Natter. Classes were 2.5 hours long every Monday for 8 weeks. Our last class was on Monday, March 9th. We were supposed to have a show on Friday the 13th of March, but it got canceled due to Ohio's new social distancing requirements. Improv class taught me to say yes and. After all, that's the mantra of improv. Yes and. In the process of learning, I had a ton of fun. I didn't know what to expect, but I must say that each class was like a grown-up birthday party full of games. It was so fun, and I laughed so much that my face hurt from laughing and smiling after every class. The class had great chemistry. Not only did we have fun in class, but we also bonded after class over drinks and conversation at a local bar called The Attic. It was great. We had a blast. Apart from becoming a better improviser in class, over the 8-week improv class, my narration skills, timing, and delivery all improved. I became more spontaneous, and I felt like I could make different choices with the material I was narrating. I think improv class helped me make the most out of my medical narration demo on March 11th, too. Mission accomplished. Improv helped me become a better narrator. I had my aha moment after 8 weeks of improv class. My classmates were great. They made me feel like what I was doing was safe and normal. During our last class, for example, one of my classmates and I shared with one another that we use the special voices we use just for our pets. Do you ever talk for your dog? Yeah? Well, I used to too. Even though our 3-legged golden retriever went to doggy heaven back in 2017, his voice lives on. I know we're not crazy. In fact, I just watched Frozen 2, and, spoiler alert, the character Kristoff talks for his reindeer Sven. It's not just us improv girls. My theory is that more improv classes can help me become a better narrator. So I plan to sign up for Level 2 next time it's offered through Glass City Improv. I already miss laughing and playing games. Before I switch topics and start talking about my demo, let me just tell you about some of my favorite improv warm-ups and games. You can probably find some of these on YouTube. As a warm-up, we stood in a circle and shared a 10-second story. It's just a quick way to catch everybody up on our day or week. Another favorite warm-up was Zip Zap Zop. It got our brains going, and we got to make deliberate, obvious connections. We had to look right at one another and say zip, zap, zop, or boing. And I gotta tell you, it's pretty fun. I also like to play da-doo. That was a good warm-up. It's a rhythmic game to get us, reacting in the moment. We go around the circle and say a word, and the person right next to us needs to come up with another word. Any word right after us. Then we all follow that up as a group by saying da-doo. We also did object work exercises, so we got good at pretending to do things with objects, like making a sandwich, or wiping off a bar, or sweeping a floor, or digging a grave, while talking about something unrelated. Now for games, I'll tell you that my favorite games were Gone in 60 Seconds, Google Translate, New Choice, Advice Panel, and Freeze. Some of these were going to be in our show that got canceled. In Gone in 60 Seconds, we created a scene that lasted 60 seconds. Then we did the same scene in 30 seconds. Then in 15 seconds, and finally in 5 seconds. It was hilarious to watch. The game Google Translate was great too. First, 2 students would create a scene in English, then 2 different people would act out the same scene in gibberish, and then finally a third couple who didn't see the original scene in English would try to create the same scene back into English after watching the gibberish version. Also hilarious to watch. One of the most helpful games we played was called New Choice. During a scene, the instructor dinged a bell, and we needed to make a new choice. We had to repeat what was said and add a different ending. Things definitely got a little weird, but that's what made it funny. My favorite game, by far, was Advice Panel. Maybe it's because we all sat in a row and the format was really predictable. Maybe 4 of us would sit in a row. Everyone was given the name of a magazine, real or fake, that they were the editor of. They used the magazine as inspiration for a character and answered questions from the audience, like, what is the meaning of life? Or, describe your ideal first date. One time, I didn't know what the magazine I was given was all about. The magazine was called The Green Party. So I threw in a German accent and made up what I thought the magazine was about. I committed to it fully, and that's what made it funny. I was way off, but it was hilarious. I struggled with a game called Freeze. We had to interrupt one another during scenes and initiate brand new scenes. I had to watch how it was done a lot at first because I didn't get it. Part of it was just letting go of control and being in the moment. I was just starting to get it at the end of the 8-week class. It was still fun. I just struggled with it. In conclusion, I had a blast in Level 1 Improv Class, and it made me a better narrator. Now, let's talk about my medical narration demo. If you love a story with a happy ending, this one's for you. On a crisp fall day in October 2017, I visited Level 2 Audio, the nearest recording studio to my home. The owner, Mark, kindly offered to meet with me, show me his studio, and hear my idea about narrating pharmacy continuing education journals. If you remember from episode 2 of this podcast, Mark is the one who got me started on my voiceover journey 2.5 years ago. After we met, he gave me the name of a coach, Nancy Wolfson, and some information to help me on my journey. Without Mark's knowledge, I spent almost 2.5 years figuring out what to do with my original idea and ultimately learning the business of voiceover and training to be a voice actor who specializes in medical narration and e-learning. Between the fall of 2017 and March of 2020, I worked with David Rosenthal, among other coaches. The first time David and I spoke, I didn't know how much work I needed to become proficient at medical narration. After reading scripts with him in a private lesson, he knew what I needed to do. For starters, I needed to take his group medical narration class through the Global Voice Acting Academy. I enrolled in the class and improved dramatically. After a year of various voiceover training classes, including more private coaching with David, I was finally ready to record my demo. Everything I did over the past 2.5 years helped. Improv class, audiobook narration class, the VOcation Conference, private lessons with David, input from friends I've made along the way, and so on. This is all going to seem very serendipitous, but in a roundabout way, Mark kicked off my voiceover career, and I'm very pleased to say that he recorded my medical narration demo at Level 2 Audio on March 11th. The demo's in post-production with David right now, and I hope to have it back by the end of March. As a surprise bonus, Mark offered to include my demo on the samples page of Level 2 Audio's website, which features professional voice talents the studio recommends. I am flattered, and I'm looking forward to sharing that demo with Level 2 Audio soon. I want to take just a moment to share that I really feel like something in my life came full circle on March 11th, and it felt good. There are 2 other, smaller milestones that I want to mention before I wrap this up. As I've been working my way through audiobook narration class with Sean Pratt, I've been recording and uploading my demos on acx.com. That's the matchmaking site that connects authors and narrators who want to record audiobooks to sell on Audible, which is Amazon.com's audiobook seller. My goal is 6 demos on ACX, and I now have 3. I'm halfway there. The last milestone that I want to share is that I joined a Toastmasters club in January of 2020. After 3 months of being a guest, I finally joined. I love my club. If you're not familiar with Toastmasters, I'll briefly share that it's a nonprofit educational organization that teaches public speaking and leadership skills through a worldwide network of clubs. My club is called Westgate Toastmasters Club 3159, and we meet in Toledo, Ohio. Why would I want to join Toastmasters, and why is this a milestone? I wanted to join to become a more confident speaker, a better communicator, and a stronger leader. It's a milestone because I'm at the beginning of a journey to gaining even more skills that will help me in my voiceover career and in life. A journey begins with a single step. October 18th, 2019 was my first Toastmasters meeting. The table topics master was Joe, and the theme was celebrating grandparents. I didn't know anything about Toastmaster meetings, and I got called to the front of the room to share a 1 to 2 minute story about my grandparents. I told a story about the small town where I was raised and the grandma who wrote me many letters when I left for college, got married, and started a family. I saved all her letters, and when she was on her deathbed, I read the letters to her. She had Alzheimer's disease. Her memory had faded, but on her last day, I sensed she knew who I was and really enjoyed hearing me read those letters to her. Little did I know the table topics part of the meeting was actually a contest, and I won the Best Table Topics ribbon for my story. That meant more to me than I can say. I need to give credit where credit is due, though. I had just read the book Storyworthy by Matthew Dix the week before my first Toastmasters meeting. I used what he taught me about storytelling to win that ribbon. I guess the secret's out now. Ha ha. I can't help but share this next part. I was so excited about winning the ribbon at Toastmasters that I tweeted about it. I am not a big Twitter user, but I saw an opportunity to thank the author for the lessons I learned and give Mike, who invited me in the first place, a shout out. I'm glad I put the message out there. The author of Storyworthy, Matthew Dix, congratulated me in return. At each Toastmasters meeting, I learn even more lessons about storytelling and speechcraft by hearing members speak. I'm excited to be a new member, learn, and grow. Let's wrap this up. March 2020 has been a great month for me. I'm celebrating 10 episodes of this podcast. Level 1 improv class is done. I recorded my medical narration demo. My audiobook demos on ACX are halfway done. And I'm plugging away on my Toastmasters journey. Things are going well, and I am excited about what lies ahead. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacist Voice podcast with me, your host, Kim Newlove. I put links to the people, places, and things mentioned in this episode in the show notes. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to subscribe and read those show notes. That's thepharmacist, with an S, voice.com.